Hi everyone. I am so excited to be here this morning. Thanks for joining me. Any of you that show up as you come, just leave a message or put something in the chat to let me know that you're here, and we'll just get going. I know your time is important and I have a lot to talk about. So today I wanted to talk about what I think are the best national parks to visit during the winter. And the reason that I thought of this is actually because we're gearing up, getting ready to head to Zion National Park. And that is one of my favorite parks to go visit from the months of like November to February or March. It's really nice to be there. So I was thinking we actually do have quite a few favorite national parks to visit during the winter. And these are national parks that are typically warm. I live in a cold place. I don't know about you, but I am usually right around January time after all the holidays. I'm like, okay, I gotta get out. I gotta get outside and do something fun. So these parks are typically warm during the winter. There are some great parks to visit if you're looking for winter activities. There are some awesome ones, but that's not this list. This list is for places that are warm. That, you know, their season, their busy season is typically during the winter, and places you probably don't really want to go during the summer. So I have some favorites. There's some really good ones, and a lot of these parks are parks that I haven't talked about on video before. And so if you have any questions, be sure to leave them in the messages or the chat, and I will try to get to those as I talk. And again, if you are here, just leave me a hello in the messages so that I know you're here. I would love to see who I'm talking to. So anyway, but like I said, we're getting ready to head out to Zion. It's been a weird travel year this year, but Zion is only a few hours away from my house, and so it's been blustery out here today. And I'm telling you, some sunshine and some warm weather sounds really good right now. So, hey, Kim, thanks for saying hi all the way from New Jersey. That's pretty far from me. I'm glad you're here. Thank you. So I'm just going to jump in, and I'm basing what I'm talking about today on the post that I have on Dirt in My Shoes. And so I will link that probably after I get off the video today so that you can read through stuff if you want. But I do plan on going a little bit more in depth right now. So hi, Steve in Washington. Awesome. Oh, man, I was supposed to go to Washington this summer and it didn't work. So hoping for next summer. Okay, so the first national park that I want to talk about that I think is perfect for visiting during the winter is Death Valley. And if you've been to Death Valley, let me know. I'd love to see who's been there. But Death Valley, so for me, the first time I visited Death Valley was probably 4 years ago or so. And I never really had a desire to visit Death Valley. I hadn't heard awesome things about it from anybody. It seemed like people just didn't really love it. And so I wasn't in a real rush to get there. But when I started Dirt in My Shoes, I thought, well, I need to go to these other parks too. And so I went to Death Valley, and oh my gosh, it blew me away. I love Death Valley. We look forward to our yearly trip to Death Valley every time. My husband and I were just talking about this yesterday. When are we going to Death Valley? We need to plan that. We love that park. So definitely don't cross that one off your list. It's probably the best one to visit during the winter because that truly is when you want to be there. Oh, hi, Mike from Champaign, Illinois. Cool. Thank you for being here. And Hannah says she loves Death Valley. Temps are great in the winter. Yes, so the temperatures are perfect during the winter, and it's just such a nice getaway. So for those of you that have not been to Death Valley, it is the largest national park in the contiguous United States. And so it's massive. There's so much to do in Death Valley. It's also the lowest point in North America and the hottest place, they say, on Earth. And that's kind of eating contest, but it's really hot. So you go there, usually by April, it's too hot for people. They start shutting stuff down. They do leave some things open when it's that hot, but their really popular season is typically like October, November through March. And the temperatures during that time, like we'll usually go in January, the temperatures in that time are usually like in the 60s, 70s range, which is perfect instead of like 120. So it's just like perfect for getting out and doing things. A few of my favorite things to do there are, Golden Canyon, if you're a Star Wars fan, because they filmed Star Wars in Golden Canyon. Dante's View is gorgeous. You like drive up to the top of the mountain and you look out over the whole valley. Mosaic Canyon is really nice. My kids love Mesquite Sand Dunes. We are there daily, usually while we're there, so that they can play in the sand. And then on top of like the things that I think you can't miss that are in the can't miss list for Death Valley on Dirt in My Shoes, there's a lot of other things you can do if you have kind of like a higher clearance 4-wheel drive vehicle. And that's, I think, where it really gets fun in Death Valley, because those other things are beautiful and they're really awesome. They're great for a first-time visit. But if you plan on going back, kind of like we do every year, you start to dig into some of the harder to get to activities, and you really start to feel the ruggedness and just like how raw and wild the nature is out there. And so last year we drove out to the racetrack, which you may have seen pictures. It's like these beautiful mountains, and then there's these rocks that move, and it was a mystery for a long time. You can see their tracks of where they've moved from. And that is a very long drive down a very bumpy road. We actually ruined the suspension on our truck driving out there. We had to go drive and get it fixed. So I would rent a Jeep next time we do that, but it was really cool. So like the racetrack is probably the most famous, but Titus Canyon as well is awesome. And then you can get into the mountains and hike to the top of Telescope Peak and stuff. That would be something to do later in the season, or maybe if you did visit during the summer months, that's where you'd want to be. It wouldn't be as hot there. So anyway, Death Valley just has like a million cool things to do. The weather is perfect. The campgrounds rarely fill. They're not great campgrounds. Like a lot of them are just like parking lots, with like paint lines telling you where you get to camp. So it's not like there's like anything super special necessarily about the campgrounds there, but they almost always have space. And so it's nice because then you don't have to stress about getting first come, first serve. And if you're driving in from like the Vegas area, which is typically how most people come into Death Valley, you'll also be close to Valley of Fire State Park, which is not a national park, but it's just a short drive out of Vegas. And that's awesome too. So if you're looking for like a loop, if you're wanting to connect some of the national parks together, a lot of people either do like Death Valley and Joshua Tree or like Death Valley and Zion, because Death Valley and Zion both skirt, they're both within a couple hours of Vegas. So that's a good option if you're planning on going out that way. So if you have any questions about Death Valley, let me know. Hi, Ed. Thanks for being here. Everything is good. Everything is, we're just gearing up, getting ready to go to Zion. Looking forward to Thanksgiving. It will be a different Thanksgiving this year. So we'll see how it goes. Okay, so that's Death Valley. And that would be, like I said, that's the one we always look forward to. So that's where I'd kind of point you if you're looking for a great national park to visit during the winter. That's an awesome option. So the second one that I want to talk about is Big Bend National Park. And Big Bend is in Texas. I should mention Death Valley is in California. It's on like the California-Nevada border. So, but Big Bend, now we're talking about Big Bend, that's in Texas. And you won't believe it takes a lot of effort to get to Big Bend. The first time we drove out there, we're just driving through West Texas, and there's nothing there for hours and hours and hours. We're like, where are we going? But you're trying to get all the way down to the bottom of Texas. It is on the Rio Grande River, and on the other side of the Rio Grande River is Mexico. So you really are at the bottom of Texas. And it does take a while to get out there, but it's awesome. Nicole said Big Bend is gorgeous. It really is. It really is. And it's a fun area because I think you put so much effort into getting out there that once you're there, it feels different. I mean, you're really not near any cities. It's you and nature. And it's a really cool experience. So, what we like to do in Big Bend, so you've got like the main hikes, you've got like the Santa Elena Canyon, which is the famous picture that you'll see of Big Bend with the two canyon walls and the river in the middle. It's gorgeous, so beautiful. That hike surprised me with my young kids. There are some pretty narrow and steep drop-offs on that one that nobody had really mentioned. And so, I have my like 3-year-old in tow going, but it's a really cool hike. The other area, the main area of Big Bend is the Chisos mountain area. And that's where you'll actually drive up into the mountains of Big Bend. You can see them from anywhere, they just kind of jut out of the desert, and you can drive up in there. There's some nice hikes up there. Like the windows view is really short and beautiful. There's a Chisos basin that's a good one. And then like what is that one called? Lost Mine. The Lost Mine Trail is kind of up in that area. That's a really popular day hike as well. So the Chisos Mountain area also has a campground, and there's a lodge. That's the only lodge in the park. So there's some fun stuff to do there. And then you go to the other side and you're down in the Rio Grande Village area. There's a really nice campground down there. This is also where, if you want to go into Mexico, you can go in from there. And we did that, and it was awesome. It was really fun. The border right now is not open. So you'll want to keep that in mind if you're looking for somewhere this year to go. But you can still enjoy Big Bend without going to Mexico. But it's really unique because you actually have to get ferried. You get ferried across the river. So there's some Mexican nationals waiting there for you to ferry you across. And then from there, you can either walk up into town. I think it was like a mile on a dirt road to get into town. Or they have people waiting there with donkeys. So you can pay for a donkey ride into town, which is what we did with our kids. And that was when we went into, it's called Boquillas. When we went into Boquillas, it's probably 3 years ago. My kids still talk about that. They loved that experience. And so it's just we went into Boquillas, we bought some souvenirs. They have a couple restaurants that are amazing. So we got some really good Mexican food, and then just went back across the river back into Big Bend. So there's a lot to do there. It's a really cool park. A lot of people like to pair that park with Carlsbad Caverns and Guadalupe Mountains. So those are kind of the nearest to Big Bend, but you're still talking, I would say probably, I'm trying to remember, we've made that drive a couple times, probably 4 to 5 hours to get from Big Bend up to Guadalupe Mountains. Guadalupe Mountains isn't great for the winter, like dead winter, because they do get snow. However, like if you're there kind of in the shoulder season, March, April, then Guadalupe Mountains is typically really nice that time. But Carlsbad Caverns, because it's a cave, it doesn't really matter if it's the winter or not. And so that's a fun one to pair with it. And Carlsbad Caverns is my favorite. That's my favorite cave in the US. It's amazing. So again, that's a really fun thing to do, is to pair those ones up. And I will mention, if you're planning on going to Big Bend during the winter, try to avoid March if you can. That's Texas spring break, and it is slammed. Like, you can't find camping. There's nowhere to stay. People are driving in from like Alpine, Texas, which is a ways out, but kind of the nearest town. And so people are driving quite a ways in and out to get to the park because there's nowhere to stay in the park. And so do keep that in mind as well. I would go earlier than March if you can. So, and Perry joining from Mission. We have to plan our trips around here, keeping bug season in mind. Yeah, so yes, okay. Well, while we're talking about Big Bend, I will mention last time we were in Big Bend, we were camping down in the Rio Grande Village, right by the river, and the bugs were horrible. They were really bad. I think if you were camping further away from the river or up in the mountains, it wouldn't be as big of a deal. But yeah, they were so bad. Like, we couldn't turn our lights on without getting swarmed in the evenings and stuff, and they were just everywhere. So that is something to keep in mind. But overall, not as big of a deal. It was only a big problem at night when we were turning our lights on and stuff while we were right next to the river. So, but yeah. Grace joining from Charlotte. We're hoping to visit Congaree next week. Yes. And I will kind of touch on those. There are some really good ones in the southern US that are great for winter traveling. So, and Matt joining from California. Hi, Matt. Our family loved our winter trip to Big Bend a couple years ago and tied in Carlsbad Caverns, Guadalupe Mountains, White Sands, and Sahuaro. Yeah, that is a big loop. But again, yeah, a lot of these parks, they're destinations on their own if you want to do that. But generally, when you're traveling along in the southern part of the U.S., you can hook a lot of these parks together to make a grand vacation, which is fun. And a lot of you may not know that we were recently full-time RVers. We did that for about 3 years. And so we still had to find places to visit during the winter. We had to have places to go. And so a lot of these parks that I'm mentioning are places that were just like automatic destinations for us during those 3 years of full-time RVing. And yeah, you just kind of loop them all together. You can go all along the southern United States, and just make a big fun loop out of it. So yes, you're exactly right. And that does sound awesome. So any other questions about Big Bend? That one's a fun one. And I do want to mention a few of these parks, they have monsoon seasons during the summer as well, which is what makes them great winter destinations. So Big Bend is one of those. That's why I do recommend visiting during the winter months. Or, I mean, you're typically talking like October through April, and then it will start getting really hot, and then the summer monsoons come. And so that's something to keep in mind as well. Another reason why that park is better in the winter versus the summer. And Angie, hi Angie. Angie just visited Zion 2 weeks ago. Love it. Finally spotted some bighorn sheep. Yes. That's awesome. And we're heading to Zion. I'm going to talk in depth about Zion. I know I get a lot of questions about Zion. And so I want to make sure to talk about that and answer any questions you guys have. So I'm moving on off of Big Bend. So the first one is Death Valley. Second one, Big Bend. Oh, Byron, you have a question. Is there any hotels around Big Bend? I mean, really good ones. You will be shocked when you drive down there. It is not by anything. It really is not. If you want to be in the park and stay in a hotel, you've got to get something at the Chisos Mountain Lodge. That's the only option. Otherwise, you're in like Terlingua or Alpine, which, can be hit and miss. We were in a trailer. We were in our RV, so we didn't stay in hotels, but Alpine had a nice RV park and stuff. Like, it had stuff there. So you could probably find what you want in Alpine. But then you have to drive, it's like an hour and a half. So, it's not that close to Big Bend, but it's closer than anything else. So keep that in mind. Yeah, it's a harder one to get to, but it's worth it. It is so cool. The next park that I want to talk about that I think is great for winter, and it's been a family favorite, is Sahuaro National Park. Sahuaro National Park is in Arizona. It's towards the bottom of Arizona. It gets really nice and hot down there. You're just right outside of Tucson. And so you've got lots and lots of options, lots of things to do. You're not that far from Phoenix, and they have a lot of cool state parks and stuff around that area. A lot of people go there in the winter. You've got a lot of what we call snowbirds, which are people who leave the colder areas to go to the warmer areas and stayed for the winter. So you've got a lot of that going on down there. And Sahuaro is interesting because it has two different sections. You've got a west section and an east section, and they're on either side of the city of Tucson. So to get to one or the other, you have to drive through Tucson, about an hour through Tucson. And Tucson's interesting because it doesn't really have like a good direct route to get from west to east, Sahuaro. So it takes a while. You're driving through town, you're kind of driving through small streets and stuff to get from one side to the other. But it's a really fun area. We look forward to visiting Sahuaro every year. My sister actually lives down in that area, so we're there a lot. And you've got, not only do you have Sahuaro right there, but you also have Oregon Pipe Cactus National Monument, which I might even like more than Sahuaro. It was a cool place. It's smaller. It's a really small national park or national monument right on the border of Mexico, but it's really cool. You've also got Tombstone, Arizona. If you like the Wild West stuff, that's not that far from Sahuaro. So there's just a lot of really fun things. You've also got Karchner Caverns, which is down there, which is a beautiful cave system. So Sahuaro generally doesn't take that much time to explore. It's not very big. There's not very many roads through it. There's not a ton of hiking. And so when we're down there, we're, spending a day or two in Sahuaro and then doing things around the area. And you've got to try a Sonoran hot dog while you're in Tucson. They're really yummy. So but a few things to do to keep in mind with Sahuaro. So this is another park that has a monsoon season during the summer. And so being there in the winter is really nice. It's also another park that gets super hot during the summer. And so being there in the winter is really nice. So you'll see if you plan your trip a little bit further into the spring, like March, April, you may be able to see some of the cacti blossom. And the saguaro blossom doesn't usually come until June, and by then it's quite hot. So, but there's so many different types of plants down there that bloom earlier than that. And so that's a really cool thing to do if you're planning a trip. We like to go in usually March. It's starting to get hot. Things are starting to bloom, but it's not too hot. So it's a really nice time to be there. The interesting thing about Sahuaro, again, is you've got the two sections. So the west section has more of your hiking trails, like the shorter hiking trails that you want to do on a first-time visit. And the eastern section has a really nice scenic drive that you drive around and just kind of soak in all the beautiful sights. You've got like the cactus with the mountain views over on the east on that drive. We've found a couple more things that are really fun, and I have a list of things to do in Sahuaro. It's a list of 5, so it's a small park. But on the west side, they've got this awesome museum just outside of the park, just down the road, and it's called the Arizona Sonora Desert Museum. And that's really cool because it's more like a zoo of desert animals. And so you can see the bighorn sheep and and the coyote and stuff like that live in that area, plus all the plants. And then we found last time we were there, every time you drive to East Sahuaro, you pass by the Pima Air and Space Museum, which is just a huge collection of military planes and things like that. And we took our kids there last time, and it was awesome. Like my son still talks about some of the favorite airplanes that he saw while we were there. And so, yeah, again, that one's more of like a destination for the area and not as much like you go to Sahuaro the whole time. There's just a lot to do around that area. So keep that in mind. If you have any questions about Sahuaro or any of the other places I mentioned in that area, let me know. But that's a really fun destination. Let me take some questions here. Monica, is Mesa Verde worth it in March, or is too much closed for the winter months? If you haven't been there before, I would not go during the winter months because, yeah, most of the tours are closed, and those really are the highlight. So you can still do like some of the scenic drive and stuff, and you can see things, but you can't tour. They typically don't open those until later. So I would skip that one if you haven't been there, because the tours are awesome. Like those tours, oh, they just make the whole experience. It's really fun to hear from the park rangers and stuff, and to be actually standing there. And some of them you get to climb the ladders and stuff. It's really cool. Byron, then how about the Sedona area? So Sedona is good in the winter. It's not quite as warm. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, it's a fun one to go to. And you know, there are places that are still good in the winter. Like, you know, if you're going to go to Sedona, you're not that far from Flagstaff and the Grand Canyon and stuff. But Flagstaff gets a lot of snow, and the Grand Canyon gets snow. So, I mean, you're kind of like on the border of it being warm versus snowy in Sedona. But there's a lot of like Native American sites around Sedona and stuff too. It's a really cool place, but you probably won't want to like swim or like go to Slide Rock or anything like that because it's colder. Christine, do you recommend Monument Valley National Monument, Grand Canyon, Horseshoe Bend, and Sedona in January? So again, yeah, you'll hit snow probably. The Grand Canyon, we were there in March of this year, right before they shut stuff down, and it was snowy, and they've already gotten a fair amount of snow. So a lot of times that snow will melt off, but it does linger as ice on some of the trails. So keep that in mind. But yeah, we've done Horseshoe Bend and stuff in the winter, and it's typically fine. It's just cooler and snowier. So than some of these others. If you go further south, you'll have nicer weather. Okay. So on that note, the fourth park that I want to talk about is Zion. And this is a big one. This is a really popular one. And the reason I include it on my list, it's not typically like a winter destination. You're in southern Utah. So the St. George area of southern Utah stays pretty nice and warm throughout the winter. It's you know, you're talking like 50s usually. Zion does get snow. It does have lingering ice on some of these trails, but also you get some really nice, sunny, beautiful days for exploring in Zion. And I really, really love Zion in the winter, mostly for two reasons. First, it's not hot. It gets so hot in Zion. If you go during the summer, it's like really hard to hike. It's not as fun to be out doing stuff. I mean, you're talking 100+ degrees for most of the day during the summer. And so Zion in the winter is actually like more my like comfort level of hiking temperatures. I don't like to be super hot. I like to be in like the cooler, maybe put on a jacket to hike range. And that's how Zion is during the winter. It's really nice. Secondly, Zion is just like so busy during the summer. It gets crazy. And so everything's packed. It's hard to find parking and stuff. And it's getting a little bit more that way in the off season. Unfortunately, the off season isn't as quiet as it typically used to be, but it is still quieter. And so it's just nice to explore the park under those circumstances. It's really hard to find a place in Zion that's quiet during the summer. So that's why I really love being there in the winter. But it is a little bit colder. So that's like my one exception to this list is it does get a little bit colder. For Zion, so what you'll typically encounter is like if you want to do the Narrows, which is one of the most popular hikes through the river, you can still do that during the winter, but you'll need gear. It gets really cold. We hiked the Narrows last year in November, right around this time actually, and there was ice in the water. It was freezing. So, but Zion Guru, that's our friends, they run a gear shop right outside of Zion National Park, and they're awesome. Like Jonathan over there is awesome. But his gear is so good that he rents out. If you're going to do the Narrows, that's who I recommend, because you don't want gear that fails. It's cold. So, but they have like the special pants and socks and shoes and stuff that you can use. In fact, we used like the whole suit that went all the way up and over our shoulders and stayed nice and toasty warm. So you can do that during the winter. Angel's Landing can be a little bit more hit and miss in the winter because that trail does accumulate snow and it does get icy. And Angel's Landing is not somewhere you want to be if it's icy unless you are really prepared and have the right gear. So keep that in mind. But otherwise, I mean, it's really nice. It's really nice to be there in Zion. If you can hit it on some nicer days, we like to go in like February. We've actually stayed in Zion for the last 2 winters when we were full-time RVing. So we spent a lot of time there. So I've seen Zion in November, December, January, February, basically through the whole winter. And February typically stays not as busy, but better weather. So I really like February. But the holidays and stuff, I mean, it's just a fun place to be. So keep that in mind. You can do a lot of the hiking. The Parouse Trail is really good that time of year because that gets a lot of sun and it's on the valley floor. The Watchman Trail is typically pretty good. The Riverside Walk is usually ice covered. You can still do it unless they close it for falling ice. And if you can hit it in like around storms and stuff, and some of the winter storms, or if there's been a lot of snow and it's starting to run off, you can see waterfalls in the park, which you typically can't see. So Zion is really cool. I love Zion in the winter. If you have any questions about visiting Zion in the winter, let me know. But I typically will point people to either fall or winter in Zion versus summer. And spring is really nice, but the Narrows is usually closed that time. So that is a downside if you're hoping to do the Narrows. The water levels are too high in the spring. So fall is really nice. The early part of winter, if you don't mind a little snow, the main part of winter. And then as you start kind of getting into spring, February-ish is really, really nice. So let me check some questions here. Sorry for asking a lot. Don't be sorry. I'm glad you're asking. How about White Sands National Park during the winter? That one typically stays pretty warm. That one's not too bad. 60s, 70s. So it will get colder at night, but during the day is typically fine. What you'll hit going to White Sands is, and it depends on the weather forecast, but it gets really windy out in that area. And so if there is any snow or any weather coming in, sometimes they'll close the roads to get there because the wind gets really bad. But other than that, like once you're there and exploring, it's typically pretty nice. So and those temperatures are like average for January, the 60s, 70s. So Angie, we went in December, to Monument Valley, and it snowed, so you couldn't see as good. Yeah. So the cool thing about, like, you're asking about like Monument Valley, Sedona, Grand Canyon, places like that. The cool thing about those parks in the winter is that honestly, they are gorgeous with all the white snow on the red rock. That's one of my favorite things. So, and Zion will get that too. Zion will get like a dusting of snow on top of the red cliffs. And oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. And Bryce Canyon is similar. Bryce Canyon gets really cold in the winter, super, super cold, and a lot of snow. But I have never seen Bryce Canyon more beautiful than when it's covered in snow. So just keep that in mind too. If you're thinking of wanting to do some of these parks that are in a colder region or colder area, if they've got the red rock and they've got the snow, it's hard to go wrong. But if you want to be warm, like really warm on your trip, don't go there. Go to Death Valley or Sahuaro. Okay, Monica, how about Dinosaur National Monument in the winter? It gets cold. Dinosaur is cold. So, and snowy. Erin, any chance there will be a Black Friday or Cyber Monday deal on the guidebooks? You're so nice. I want to buy all of them. Yes, I run one every year. It's typically the only time that I put my itineraries on sale. This year it will be a true Black Friday through probably Giving Tuesday or Travel Tuesday. There's different names for it. Or Small Business Tuesday. Yeah, so be on the lookout for that. I will email that out. I don't usually announce it on Facebook just because I love my email subscribers. They're so great. I love all of you that are on the email list. So definitely get on that if you need to. You can sign up for a free national parks checklist to get on that, and I can link that in the video notes. But yeah, there will be one. And maybe I'll just put the code on Facebook. That might be easier too. So yes, thank you for asking, and thank you for supporting my small business. Okay, I'm going to move off of Zion. I think I do get a lot of questions about Zion. Oh, one last thing. They stop running the free shuttle in Zion at the end of November until typically like February, with the exception of the week of Christmas and New Year's. They start it back up again. So that's another thing to keep in mind if you're wanting to drive to all the sites and stuff. We've not had a problem getting parking in like during weekdays of the off season, but those parking lots are small. So if the shuttle's not running, then you'll still kind of need to get up early and stuff to be getting parking in some of those smaller parking lots. So, okay. The next one that I really want to talk about in depth is Joshua Tree National Park. Joshua Tree National Park is in Southern California. You're a couple hours away from LA. The closest like big area that you would probably recognize is Palm Springs. And Joshua Tree is a really interesting park. So the weather stays really nice throughout the winter. It can snow. It has happened, but it doesn't typically last. And generally, it stays pretty warm in Joshua Tree. So a lot of people will add that on. They'll do like a Death Valley Joshua Tree with a stop or drive through the Mojave Desert as you're driving between the two. And Joshua Tree, the first time I went to Joshua Tree, so because my family's from California, part of them, and so we're in California a lot, and I've been to Palm Springs a lot, but like had never really gone to Joshua Tree. It's about an hour and a half drive to Joshua Tree from there, or an hour. And so the first time I went to Joshua Tree, and I was thinking that, I'm just going to go hiking, right? That's what I always do. I go hiking when I'm in these parks, and that's my favorite thing to do. And so we got to Joshua Tree and we went hiking, and there's some really good hikes. But I have to say, like, I didn't fall in love with it. I was just like, yeah, okay. It's the desert. And you see a lot of cactus, and the Joshua trees are awesome. I love the Joshua trees. They're super cool. But when I really started to appreciate and fall in love with Joshua Tree National Park was when I went rock climbing. And that's what I figured out the first time that I visited that park, was that you don't go there to hike. You can hike, there's hiking, obviously, but its whole culture, like its whole quirkiness, everything about Joshua Tree kind of revolves around the rock climbing. People come from everywhere to go rock climbing. The climbing's really good. It's what you do in Joshua Tree. So once I figured that out, and we went rock climbing with cliffhanger guides. Sabra took us, and she's awesome. But that's when I really was just like, okay, I love Joshua Tree. This place is awesome. So what I will say about that is, like, if you're working through the can't miss list for things to do in Joshua Tree that you'll find on Dirt in My Shoes, rock climbing is just one of the things on there. But if you do nothing else, I would definitely recommend rock climbing. And the cool thing, like when I was talking to Sabra at Cliffhanger Guides, kind of about how they run their business and what they do, they don't care what age you are. So if you've got little kids, we didn't take our little kids, mostly because we didn't think we could. They were pretty young, like 2 and 5 when we did it. And but talking to Sabra, and she was like, no, bring your kids. You know, we love taking kids. And so I thought, okay, you know, like it really can be a family thing. So if you're worried about having young kids, and then she also, like, they take like 85-year-old people rock climbing. You know, they're very, very good at meeting you where you're at. I am not a very good rock climber. I'd never really done it that much before. And so but they were awesome about it. So I just want to point that out. If there's nothing else that you do in Joshua Tree, really seriously consider going rock climbing, because that just made the whole experience for me. It's what made me love the park. And that's why a lot of people love the park, is because of the climbing. So just keep that in mind. But there are some good trails. There's some historical places you can tour, abandoned mines, the Keys Ranch, things like that. So Joshua Tree is a really fun one. Palm Springs is really nice in the winter. And so if you're looking for also a bigger city to do things in, Palm Springs is really nice. So that's a good one. We usually do, like I said, Death Valley. We'll go we're from Utah. So if we're driving in from Utah, we'll do Valley of Fire, possibly Zion first, Zion, Valley of Fire State Park, Death Valley, down through the Mojave Preserve into Joshua Tree. And that's a really great trip. So let me check these questions. Hannah, what about Virgin Islands or Biscayne for the winter? Yes, we will talk about that. And Christine, I'm looking forward to guides for the Canadian Rockies. You guys are so funny. I was a park ranger in U.S. national parks, so I know the U.S. national parks really well. And I have just been getting like pounded with requests for Canada. And I'm like, I do U.S. stuff, right? And I have just like so many questions about Canada. So I wrote can't miss lists for both Banff and Jasper. So they are already up there. If you go to Dirt in My Shoes, click on the National Parks tab in the menu, and then scroll down into Canada. It's right after California in the list of buttons that you can push, and you'll see Banff and Jasper there. And I was conflicted about this because I didn't really want to branch into Canada. But honestly, it gets really confusing. It gets really confusing up there. It's hard to navigate through some of this stuff, and the parking, and just the way that some things are done differently. And so as I was writing these guides and stuff, I was like, oh, it's so needed. It's hard to find good information. And so I'm really excited. So there's a 10 things you can't miss for Banff and a 10 things you can't miss for Jasper if you guys are interested in looking those up. Those are not related to the best winter parks to visit, but thank you for bringing that up. Yep, they're up there. Okay, so the last park there's several parks here, and I just have to apologize because I feel like the southern United States is grossly underrepresented on Dirt in My Shoes, and there's a reason for that. It's because that area of the country does not want me to visit. I have tried so many times, you guys, to get down to Florida since I started Dirt in My Shoes, and knowing that I need to get down there to really get in there really good for you guys so that I can I'd never write about a place unless I just like know it back to front, because I don't want to just be noise out there. I don't want that to be what you're basing your trip off, is just like my one trip to the park. I think that it's unfair to not have a really good grasp of the park before I write about it, which is why the Everglades are not there. My dad is actually from Florida. I have family in Florida, but the past 4 years we have been trying to get to Florida and things have just not worked out. So we were going to do it last year, and then all the COVID stuff, we were thinking we'd go in March, and then things started shutting down. And then we wanted to go this year, probably in January or February, but I'm thinking we probably won't. And then when we were full-time RVing, we tried to get to Florida several times and got rained out or stormed out or hurricaned out. So I am going to get to Florida, but here's the thing that I do know is that I would never go to the Everglades during the summer. I don't like the heat. I don't like the humidity. I don't like all the creatures and stuff like that. And so that's something that I do know for sure, is that Everglades is a really good park to visit during the winter. And again, for my own purposes, I would plan a trip probably January, February, March for really good weather, most things being open. That's kind of their peak season. So that's a really good time to go. And then again, you're not hitting the wet season of Florida typically at that time of year. So that's what you're going to want to avoid, is like those wet, monsoony, hurricaney seasons that come later in the year. So yes, Everglades is great for the winter. I just don't know the park well enough to write a post on it yet. And I am working on it. I'm trying to get down there. The other parks, so included in that, and I've seen a few questions about this, Biscayne is primarily an ocean park, and so that's great in the winter in Florida. That's a good place to be. And then Dry Tortugas, again, that's off the coast of Florida. And so winter, again, is going to be a great place to be there, because you're not going to want to be there during hurricane season or wet, Florida's wet season. So yes, Everglades, Dry Tortugas, Biscayne, and then you've got some really lovely island parks that are just harder to get to. So for winter destinations, you've got Haleakala and Hawaii Volcanoes in Hawaii. And Haleakala, actually, the mountain is high enough. It does get snow, but you're on Maui. So you still get the beaches and the whale watching and everything in Haleakala. And then Hawaii Volcanoes is really nice in the winter. The nice thing about Hawaii is, so I lived in Hawaii for 1.5 years. And the nice thing about Hawaii is that the temperature just doesn't swing that much, so whether it's winter or summer, you will maybe get a little bit more rain and stuff in the winter. But typically you're still looking at really nice temperatures, and the ocean water is really warm, especially if you're like used to California ocean or Oregon or Washington ocean water, which is cold. You get out to Hawaii and it's just like a warm bath. So year round, those are great options. So, and I do have a post up for Hawaii volcanoes. That's on the Big Island. However, I have not been back since the volcano erupted. And so they've closed some things since then. I'm trying to get back there probably sometime in 2021 to update that. But those are some really good options in Hawaii any time of year, honestly. Who could say no to Hawaii? The other ones that are national parks that I have not been to are the Virgin Islands National Park and Samoa, American Samoa National Park. So those ones I have not been to. They're supposed to be lovely, really good winter destinations. I just don't have any information on those ones. They're harder to get to. You can't, as far as I know, you can't get to Samoa right now. I've got friends out there that the borders are basically closed. So, and Hawaii also has been very hard to get to this year. And so those are ones, that's why I say I have a trip planned for Hawaii this in 2021, but who knows, because they're still really discouraging people from going there. So those are some to mention, but again, ones that I'm not going to pretend to know a lot about. So if you've been there, you can chime in and let us know how lovely they are during the winter. But that's my list. And so if you have any questions about some of these national parks to visit during the winter, I'm happy to answer those. Let me see if there's any questions over here. We got Jack. What do you think of Everglades in the winter? I covered that. And hi, Jack. Okay, have you been to Cathedral Gorge State Park in Nevada? I have not. State parks are something that I typically don't go to right now just because I'm really trying to dig into the national parks hard. So no, I haven't. It's like you're on a different planet. Nevada is cool. Nevada has lots of really cool stuff. John, agreed. I've been to the Everglades many times in January, February, and March. Yeah, I know enough about the Everglades to know that that's a good time to go. So, and again, my family's from out there. We never go in the winter or in the summer. You don't go to Florida in the summer. Not if you don't like the heat or humidity. So, okay, well, then that covers what I wanted to talk about today. And I'm going to try to do more of these live videos. I want to sometimes have a theme or something to talk about. Other times I will just jump on for a quick question and answer so that you can ask me whatever as you're planning your trips. And again, as I said in my video a couple weeks ago, I really anticipate 2021 to be a huge travel year. I think it's going to be busy. So some of these parks that are good winter destinations would be awesome to get to, kind of before they get busy. If you've got any plans, again, I really like starting to travel to these, after the holidays. It gives you something to look forward to and gets you out of the cold. So if you have any questions about any of it, let me know. I'm happy to answer those. And I hope to talk to you again, possibly before Thanksgiving, but if not, happy Thanksgiving. And if you're looking to buy some itineraries for your upcoming trips, I did get that question. I will be doing a Black Friday, Cyber Monday sale. So keep your eyes out for that. And I will talk to you all soon. Have a good one.